For over a millennium, Korea was a unified state. Today, a 4-kilometer-wide scar cuts it in two. This border is a physical manifestation of a century of trauma, from colonial subjugation to a devastating civil war that technically never ended. The story of modern Korea is understood through the metaphor of a compressed spring. Intense pressure, violent release, and divergent trajectories. The compression occurred during the colonial rule, leading to a violent release and the ultimate divergence of two nations. The compression began in 1910 with Japan's formal annexation of Korea, which ended centuries of sovereignty. This 35-year occupation was defined by oppressive military rule and economic exploitation, including land surveys, resource extraction, and food shortages. The colonial government implemented Naisen-itai, aiming to erase Korean identity through forced cultural assimilation. This included banning the Korean language, forced name changes, and mandatory worship at Japanese Shinto shrines. Despite efforts to erase Korean culture, some Japanese vestiges remain in modern Korean life. These influences include everyday words, systems like school assemblies and paperwork, and workplace seniority norms. Liberation in August 1945 led to a temporary division of Korea at the 38th parallel. This became a permanent ideological fault line, marked by Soviet influence in the north and US influence in the south, eventually leading to the Korean War. Japan's surrender in 1945 shattered the hope for a united Korea. The US and Soviet Union divided the peninsula at the 38th parallel. This temporary line escalated into a permanent ideological border as the Cold War intensified, resulting in two separate states by 1948. On June 25, 1950, North Korea launched a full-scale invasion to unify the peninsula by force. The war's violent arc involved an initial near collapse of South Korea, the dramatic Incheon landing, Chinese intervention, and a long, grinding stalemate. The Korean War was one of the most destructive conflicts of the modern era. Casualties were estimated at 3 million deaths, with most major cities destroyed. The total war of state consolidation also resulted in significant long-term mental health impacts. The roots of generational trauma lie in the occupation and the Civil War, creating silent suffering and emotional distance. Echoes of this trauma include unspoken pain, issues of identity and belonging, and hypervigilance among subsequent generations. A personal testimony reflects the devastating reality of this period. One survivor recounted, "My entire childhood was during the occupation, a brief respite, and then the Civil War, highlighting a life marked by poverty and scarcity." On July 27, 1953, the fighting was halted by the Korean Armistice Agreement, a military ceasefire, not a peace treaty. More than 70 years later, peace remains elusive. The DMZ, a 4 kilometers wide buffer zone, institutionalized the division, locking generations into vigilance without resolution. The armistice set the two Koreas on dramatically different paths. South Korea became a vibrant, global economic powerhouse. North Korea became an isolated, totalitarian state, prioritizing military power and stagnation. Statistically, the divergence is stark. South Korea is modern and connected, with a high GDP per capita and life expectancy. North Korea is isolated and controlled, with significantly lower metrics across key areas. The Liberty Gap highlights the difference in freedom and mobility. South Korea enjoys unrestricted travel, uncensored internet, and freedom of expression. North Korea has severely restricted movement, limited access to information, and suppressed dissent. The timeline shows a century of divergence. While South Korea experienced the, quote, miracle on the Han River and the K-wave, North Korea faced decades of stagnation, the arduous March famine, and continued nuclear testing. A century of trauma leaves an unfinished chapter. Recent developments, including Kim Jong-un's declaration of South Korea as a hostile state, signal a hardening division. The DMZ, once temporary, now feels like a permanent fixture. Can a spring shattered ever be made whole?